What if I told you that one of the greatest scientists in history was not a perfect student and did not spend all his time inside a laboratory? What if I told you that this genius loved playing drums, solving puzzles, and making people laugh? A young boy who was simply curious about how things worked would one day help unlock the secrets of the universe and win the Nobel Prize in Physics. How did an ordinary child become one of the most brilliant minds the world has ever known? This is the unbelievable and inspiring story of Richard Feynman, the man who taught the world the joy of curiosity. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Universal English. Today, we bring you an inspiring story of curiosity, intelligence, and never-ending learning. It is the story of a boy who never stopped asking questions and grew up to become one of the greatest physicists of all time. His name was Richard Feynman. Even today, millions of students, scientists, and teachers admire his ideas and his unique way of explaining difficult concepts. But his journey to greatness was not easy. He faced personal loss, worked on one of the most secret projects in history, and spent his entire life trying to understand the mysteries of nature. This is the unbelievable and inspiring story of Richard Feynman, the man who showed the world that learning can be fun. So sit back, relax, and travel back to the early 20th century as we discover how a curious boy became one of the greatest scientific minds in history. A boy from New York. Our story begins on May 11, 1918. In the borough of Queens, New York City, a baby boy was born. His name was Richard Phillips Feynman. Nobody could have imagined that this child would one day become one of the greatest physicists in history. His father, Melville Feynman, sold uniforms for a living. His mother, Lucille Feynman, was cheerful and had a wonderful sense of humor. The family was not rich, but they valued learning and curiosity. Richard's father believed that understanding something was more important than simply memorizing facts. This lesson would shape Richard's entire life. The father who inspired a genius. Melville Feynman loved teaching his son. They often went for walks together. During these walks, his father would ask questions. Why do birds fly? Why do leaves change color? Why does the moon appear different every night? If Richard did not know the answer, his father encouraged him to investigate. One day, his father said something that Richard never forgot. You can know the name of a bird in every language, but when you're finished, you'll know absolutely nothing about the bird. His father wanted him to understand how things worked, not simply remember names. This lesson became one of the foundations of Richard's scientific thinking. The boy who loved questions. As Richard grew older, his curiosity became stronger. He wanted to know how everything worked. He took apart radios. He fixed electrical devices. He created small laboratories in his bedroom. He performed experiments for fun. Many children played games. Richard played with science. He spent hours reading books and solving puzzles. When something confused him, he refused to give up until he understood it. Sometimes his parents found him sitting quietly, thinking deeply about a problem. They realized that their son was different. He did not simply want answers. He wanted understanding. The young inventor. As a teenager, Richard became famous in his neighborhood for fixing broken radios. People would bring him their damaged radios and ask for help. Without opening them, he often listened carefully and thought about the problem. Then he would repair them. People were amazed. They thought he had magical abilities. But Richard always explained that there was no magic involved. He simply enjoyed thinking. This ability to solve problems would later make him one of the greatest scientists in the world. Falling in love with mathematics. At school, Richard discovered another passion. Mathematics. Numbers fascinated him. Equations felt like puzzles waiting to be solved. He taught himself advanced mathematics that most students never studied. Soon, his teachers realized that he was extraordinary. He could solve difficult problems quickly, and often found new ways to reach the answer. But Richard was not interested in showing off. He simply loved learning. For him, solving a difficult problem was exciting. It felt like an adventure. A future scientist. By the time he finished school, everyone knew that Richard had an exceptional mind. He entered the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, also known as MIT. There, he studied physics. Physics became his greatest passion because it tried to answer the biggest questions in the universe. Why do stars shine? Why do atoms behave the way they do? How does nature work? Richard wanted to know everything. He worked hard and spent countless hours studying. But he also had fun. He joked with friends, played games, and enjoyed life. He believed that learning should never become boring. Little did he know that his extraordinary talent would soon place him at the center of one of history's most important scientific projects. The curious boy from New York had become a brilliant young scientist. His love for questions and problem-solving was leading him toward greatness. But the biggest challenges of his life were still ahead. In Part 2, Richard Feynman will work on the secret Manhattan Project, experience heartbreaking personal loss, and help change the course of world history. A brilliant student at MIT, Richard Feynman quickly became one of the brightest students at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. He loved solving difficult problems that other students found impossible. While many people memorized formulas, Richard wanted to understand why those formulas worked. He believed that true learning meant understanding something deeply. At MIT, he spent countless hours studying mathematics and physics. But he also enjoyed having fun. He loved jokes, puzzles, and friendly competitions with his classmates. His professors soon realized that Richard had an extraordinary mind. He was not afraid to ask questions. And he was never afraid to admit when he did not understand something. This honesty made him a better scientist. After graduating from MIT, Richard continued his studies at Princeton University. Princeton was one of the most prestigious universities in America. There, he would meet some of the greatest scientific minds of his generation, meeting the love of his life. During his younger years, Richard had met a girl named Arlene Greenbaum. The two became very close friends. They enjoyed spending time together and quickly fell in love. Arlene was intelligent, kind, and had a wonderful sense of humor. She understood Richard's unusual personality better than anyone else. The two dreamed of building a happy future together. But then tragedy struck. Arlene became seriously ill. Doctors discovered that she had tuberculosis, a dangerous disease at that time. Many people advised Richard to leave her. They believed that marrying a sick person would destroy his future. But Richard refused. He loved Arlene deeply. He decided to stay by her side no matter what happened. This decision showed the kind of person he truly was. He was not only a brilliant scientist, he was also loyal and compassionate. The Secret Project. As World War II continued, scientists became worried about a terrifying possibility. They feared that Germany might build an atomic bomb. The United States decided to begin a secret project to develop this powerful weapon first. This project became known as the Manhattan Project. Because of his incredible talent, Richard Feynman was invited to join the project. He was still very young, but many scientists already recognized his brilliance. Feynman accepted the invitation. Soon, he traveled to a secret laboratory in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Very few people knew what was happening there. Everything was highly confidential. The scientists worked day and night. They understood that the outcome of the war might depend on their success. Life at Los Alamos. Life at Los Alamos was unlike anything Richard had ever experienced. The world's greatest scientists were gathered in one place. Everyone was working toward the same goal. The pressure was enormous. Every mistake could have serious consequences. But Richard remained calm. He loved solving difficult problems. He often worked late into the night, trying to understand complex calculations. Even during this serious project, he never lost his sense of humor. He enjoyed playing tricks on his friends and solving puzzles. One of his favorite hobbies was opening locked cabinets and safes. He discovered that many secret documents were not properly protected. By opening the safes, he showed people that security could be improved. His colleagues were amazed by his intelligence and creativity. A heartbreaking loss. While Richard was working at Los Alamos, Arlene's health became worse. Because of her illness, she was staying in a hospital near the laboratory. Whenever possible, Richard visited her. Despite her suffering, Arlene remained cheerful. The two still laughed together and shared happy moments. Eventually, they decided to get married. Many people did not understand this decision. But Richard knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted to spend whatever time remained with the woman he loved. Their marriage became one of the most touching stories of his life. Sadly, the happiness did not last long. In June 1945, Arlene passed away. Richard was devastated. The loss broke his heart. For a long time, he struggled with sadness and loneliness. Years later, he would still speak about her with great love and emotion. The death of Arlene became one of the most painful experiences of his life. The atomic bomb. Only a few weeks after Arlene's death, the scientists at Los Alamos completed their work. The first atomic bomb was successfully tested. Soon afterward, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The war eventually came to an end. Many people celebrated. But Richard had mixed feelings. He understood the enormous power of the weapon he had helped create. He also understood the terrible destruction it could cause. For the rest of his life, he often thought about the responsibilities of scientists. Knowledge is powerful, but how that knowledge is used can affect the entire world. This lesson stayed with him forever. A scientist without motivation. After the war, Richard felt lost. The excitement of scientific discovery had disappeared. He was still grieving for Arlene. For a time, he lost interest in physics. He no longer felt the same passion for his work. Many people thought his greatest achievements were already behind him. But they were wrong. One day, while eating in a university cafeteria, he noticed a student throwing a spinning plate into the air. The plate moved in a strange way. Most people would have ignored it. Richard became curious. He began studying its motion simply for fun. This small moment changed everything. The spinning plate reminded him why he loved science. He loved asking questions. He loved solving mysteries. And he loved discovering how nature worked. Returning to greatness. With his curiosity renewed, Richard returned to physics with fresh energy. He began studying the strange behavior of tiny particles inside atoms. These particles followed rules that were very different from ordinary objects. The subject was called quantum mechanics. It was one of the most difficult areas of science. But Richard was not afraid of difficult problems. He developed new ideas and new mathematical methods. His work helped scientists understand the behavior of particles and light. Soon, physicists around the world recognized the importance of his discoveries. The young man who had once repaired radios in his neighborhood was now becoming one of the greatest scientists on Earth. Becoming a professor. Richard later became a professor at the California Institute of Technology, often called Caltech. There, he became famous not only for his research but also for his teaching. His classes were extraordinary. He explained difficult ideas in simple and exciting ways. Students loved listening to him. He believed that if you truly understand something, you should be able to explain it clearly. He encouraged students to think for themselves and never be afraid to ask questions. His lectures would later become some of the most famous science lessons ever recorded. Millions of people still study them today. A new beginning. The young scientist who had experienced love, loss, and war had found his passion once again. His curiosity had survived every challenge. And his greatest achievements were still ahead. In Part 3, we will discover how Richard Feynman won the Nobel Prize, became one of the world's most beloved teachers, and left behind a legacy that continues to inspire millions of people, unlocking the secrets of the universe. After returning to physics with new energy, Richard Feynman began working on one of the most difficult subjects in science, quantum mechanics. The world of atoms and tiny particles was full of mysteries. Scientists knew that particles behaved in strange ways. Sometimes they acted like particles. Sometimes they acted like waves. Many physicists found these ideas confusing. But Richard loved difficult problems. He spent countless hours thinking, calculating, and searching for answers. Eventually, he developed a new way of understanding how particles interact with one another. He created diagrams that made extremely complicated ideas much easier to understand. These drawings later became famous as Feynman diagrams. Scientists all over the world began using them. Even today, students and researchers continue to study these diagrams because they remain one of the most useful tools in modern physics. The curious boy who once repaired radios had now changed the way scientists understood the universe, winning the Nobel Prize. In 1965, the world recognized Richard Feynman's extraordinary achievements. He received the Nobel Prize in Physics, one of the highest honors a scientist can receive. He shared the prize with two other scientists, Julian Schwinger and Shinichiro Tomonada. The award recognized their work in quantum electrodynamics, a theory that explains how light and matter interact. For many people, winning the Nobel Prize would be the greatest moment of their lives. But Richard remained humble. He did not think of himself as a celebrity. He simply saw himself as someone who loved solving puzzles. When reporters asked him about the prize, he seemed almost uncomfortable with all the attention. He once said that the pleasure of discovering something new was far more exciting than receiving awards. For him, the joy was in learning. The prize was simply a bonus. The professor everyone loved. At the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech, Richard became one of the most famous teachers in the world. His classes were unlike ordinary lectures. He did not simply write formulas on the board. He told stories. He asked questions. He made students laugh. He turned difficult ideas into exciting adventures. Many students said that listening to Feynman was like listening to a storyteller. He could explain complex subjects in a way that almost anyone could understand. He believed that real learning happens when curiosity comes alive. One of his most famous ideas was simple. If you cannot explain something simply, you do not understand it well enough. Because of this philosophy, his lectures became legendary. Years later, they were published as books known as the Feynman Lectures on Physics. Millions of students around the world still study these lectures today. A man with many interests. Richard Feynman was not only a scientist. He was also an artist, a musician, and an adventurer. He loved playing the drums. He especially enjoyed learning rhythms from different cultures. He often played the bongo drums and performed with friends. He also loved drawing and painting. At one point, he became so interested in art that he started taking drawing lessons. He believed that learning new things kept life exciting. He enjoyed solving puzzles, cracking codes, and exploring unusual hobbies. Many people expected a great scientist to be serious all the time. But Richard was different. He loved having fun. He laughed often. He enjoyed making jokes. He proved that a person can be both brilliant and playful. The Challenger disaster. In 1986, a terrible tragedy shocked the world. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded shortly after launch. Millions of people watched the disaster on television. The accident killed all 7 astronauts on board. The American government created a special commission to investigate what had happened. Richard Feynman was chosen as one of its members. At first, he was unsure about joining, but he eventually accepted. As always, he was determined to find the truth. During the investigation, he carefully studied the evidence. He asked difficult questions. He refused to accept simple answers. Eventually, he discovered that a small part called an O-ring had failed because of the cold weather. During a famous television demonstration, he placed a piece of the material into a glass of ice water. When he removed it, everyone could clearly see the problem. His simple demonstration helped explain the cause of the disaster to millions of people. Once again, Richard showed the world the power of curiosity and clear thinking, fighting a different battle. While continuing his work, Richard faced another challenge. He became seriously ill. Doctors discovered that he had cancer. Many people would have given up, but Richard remained brave. He continued teaching. He continued learning. He continued asking questions. Even while receiving treatment, he kept his sense of humor. Friends and family admired his courage. He understood that life is precious and short. Instead of becoming afraid, he chose to enjoy every moment he had left. His curiosity never disappeared. His love for learning never faded. The last lesson. As his health became worse, Richard spent more time reflecting on life. He realized that curiosity had been the greatest gift of his life. As a child, he had asked questions about birds and stars. As a young man, he had helped unlock the secrets of the atom. As a teacher, he had inspired millions of students. He often said that not knowing all the answers was not something to fear. In fact, uncertainty made life exciting. There were still mysteries waiting to be discovered. And that was wonderful. This way of thinking made Richard different from many people. He was comfortable with mystery. He was comfortable with questions. He believed that curiosity itself was one of life's greatest joys. The final goodbye. On February 15, 1988, Richard Feynman passed away at the age of 69. The world lost one of its greatest scientific minds. Scientists, students, and teachers around the globe mourned his death. But his ideas did not die. His books remained. His lectures remained. His discoveries remained. And most importantly, his spirit of curiosity remained. Even today, millions of people continue to learn from him. Young students watch his lectures. Scientists use his methods. Teachers share his stories. In many ways, Richard Feynman is still teaching the world. Why Richard Feynman still matters. Why do people still love Richard Feynman? Because he reminded us that learning should be exciting. He showed us that asking questions is more important than pretending to know everything. He proved that intelligence and joy can exist together. He taught us that science is not only about equations. It is about curiosity. It is about wonder. It is about exploring the mysteries of the universe. His life sends a powerful message. Never stop asking questions. Never lose your curiosity. And never stop learning. The story of Richard Feynman is the story of a boy who loved to understand how things worked. He was not perfect. He made mistakes. He experienced sadness and loss. But he never lost his sense of wonder. From repairing radios in his neighborhood to winning the Nobel Prize and becoming one of the world's greatest teachers, his journey shows us the incredible power of curiosity. You do not need to be born a genius to achieve great things. You only need the courage to ask questions and the determination to keep learning. Because one question can lead to a discovery. One discovery can change a life. And one curious mind can change the world. Just as Richard Feynman did. Thank you for watching this inspiring biography on Universal English. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and never lose your curiosity. See you in the next inspiring biography.